If you want to hear what we're saying, you're going to have to put on your headset. I think. All right. Is everybody wearing a headset? So this is just to avoid that you're being drowned out by the noise. We really want you to concentrate on what is most important. And what is most important is really looking at how climate change affects children and how we make sure that their voice is represented and that in climate finance they are prioritized as they should be. But before we open the panel, we will let young people speak to you. So may I hear the voice of children through the video?
Hi, I have some friends that want to leave a message.
You'll probably never meet me, but you could change my life.
My name is Hassan.
Soy Ana Gaby.
My name is Katie.
Burhan.
My name is Paige.
My name is Anderson.
Recently, I have experienced my first hurricane.
Climate change is something very scary.
I can't help but wonder what will happen to Canada's Arctic in my lifetime.
El año pasado tuvimos muchos incendios en mi país.
The sea I live in, which is called Caspian, have a dropping sea level problem. Because climate change is an irreversible problem, we have to act fast.
So let's start now.
This is where you guys come in.
When you're working, think about us.
Çünkü bu dünya hepimizin.
Contamos contigo.
Your decisions today will protect my future and those of many other youth.
We are the ones that will inherit the earth.
Size güveniyoruz.
Make some good decisions.
Take the steps we need.
I really appreciate your hard work.
Wish you all the best.
Bye for
Bye
now.
for now.
Bye for now, and good luck with
Good
COP29.
luck with
And good luck
COP29.
at COP29.
Well, good luck with COP29, but the future is also in our hands. It's not just luck. So you've heard the voices of children, their hopes, their fears, their urgent calls for action. And those voices really remind us, why are we here today at the Resilience Pavilion? It is really to ensure that climate action plans and climate finance responds to the needs of children. We already know some of the facts, but it never hurts to be reminded of them. That 1 billion children currently are at extreme risk of climate change. That children are not just 1/3 of the world's population, they're 50% of the extreme poor in the world. And so we cannot be relevant as a climate community if we do not take the interests of children at heart. We also know that all countries are preparing new NDCs, the NDC 3.0, the new climate plans. And we know that most of the climate plans we have now are not child responsive. So how do we change the equation with better climate plans and particularly also making sure that climate finance then flows to children? Now we have a fantastic lineup of 6 speakers that not only know what's needed and why we need to do it, but also how to get there. And that is how we hope to inspire you today to do more, better and different for children together with these partners when this event is over. We have the best and the brightest around the panel. And I would like to start with one of them, my own boss, the Executive Director of UNICEF, Kathy Russell. Kathy, I know we have something special to celebrate this week around climate finance for children, but tell us also why you think we need to focus on children. Why is that important and what we can do in terms of child-critical social services in the age of climate change? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kitty, and thank you for moderating this really important panel. We're really excited at UNICEF, I have to say, because I think the conversations about bringing children into the center of the climate discussions are really taking hold, and I feel really happy to see all of you here. I think that really demonstrates the point. For us, it's really a couple things. One, we want to make the point very clearly that children need to be considered in climate discussions. Why? Because children are affected differently in climate, and Kitty made a brief reference to this. You know, we assess at UNICEF that about half the children in the world, so 1 billion children, live in places where they are at extreme risk of climate disaster, and that's obviously a huge concern for us. What happens to children in climate change is a little bit different from adults. They're smaller, their bodies are smaller, they are more susceptible to air pollution and its impact on their lungs. They're more susceptible to heat, and their bodies are less able to process heat. We see increased numbers of preterm births when we are in these really extreme climate situations. So children are impacted directly and differently than adults. And second, children really depend on government services. So when government services are disrupted by climate disasters, either cyclones like I saw when I was in the Pacific, or flooding, or extreme heat, any of those things where children end up not going to school, their schools are destroyed, their schools are compromised, or they can't get access to health centers and health care are really very problematic for children. And as we see more and more of those problems, we know that we have to address them specifically and intentionally. So we're excited about the work that's being done here. I think that many people, especially the people on this panel, are very supportive of the work that we're doing with UNICEF and COICA, the GCF, the Global Climate Fund, which we're very excited, the Green Climate Fund, we're excited about that. The World Bank, really great partners in thinking about how children can be at the center of these discussions.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'm so happy also to know that we have Henry Gonzalez, the Chief Investment Officer of the Green Climate Fund here, because the board of the Green Climate Fund 2 weeks ago when they met took a really special decision, one that will really impact child well-being and child rights in an age of climate change. So Henry, can you please talk about the decision that your board took, but perhaps also what the 50 by 30 vision really means and how UNICEF can partner with you in terms of realizing that vision?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kitty, and thank you, Kathy. I'm also very pleased to be along these team panel members. Well, the Green Climate Fund, as you know, it's the operating financial mechanism of the Paris Agreement. And we also are part of COP. We were created by COP. We get guidance from COP. So we are here in our home, and we are here with our partners. We are a partnership-driven organization. So we work through many different entities, from UN agencies to global banks to NGOs to ministries. So actually, most people in this panel are partners to us. And one important member is a recipient, because that is the importance of youth. So we work with the World Bank, we work with the Korean cooperation at COICA, we also work very closely with the ministries, and there was a great decision also at the board on our approval of the first single country project in Somalia. So I'm honored with Her Excellency here with us. So it is a partnership organization. Now, youth now features clearly in our current programming. We do a strategic program every 4 years, and now youth is at the core. However, we have a mandate to support the most vulnerable. That is a mandate that comes from COP, and they say that we must program at least 50% of our adaptation programming in the most vulnerable people, especially in the small island development states, LDCs, and African states. But youth per se, or children per se, were not somehow featured exclusively. However, we've been working around about 153 of our projects have some links to health, education, social protection, water and sanitation. But we need quality partners. And we were missing UNICEF in this partnership. And I know, Kathy, the beginning was a bit bumpy. And then we also engage, and I want to recognize the engagement of some of your national chapters. So we engaged with UNICEF Australia because they wanted to do a potential transaction with us. But we said this is not a one-off. We need to do this institutionally. So our recent board approved UNICEF as an accredited entity to the Green Climate Fund. And we look forward to doing a lot more centered on children, but mostly centering on how we can bring the best of both institutions to really target and having heard those voices, it does tell us that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it is only through this, collective action that we get to that. So we're very pleased to welcome UNICEF to our accredited entity family, 139. So we are quite large, and I hope that we are signing that agreement hopefully in our next board if we are able to get the legal work aligned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Henry. And I just want to, of course, a little bit of promotion never harms, right? I hope you heard those words. We're missing quality partners. We were missing UNICEF. That's who we aim to be, the best and the brightest we can be for half the extreme poor in this world and 1 billion children that need us in the age of climate change. So we're deeply grateful to the board of the GCF to have accredited us as one of those partners that can work on adaptation, building resilience, and making sure that we keep children safe and provide them with the social services they need. We also have among us the World Bank, one of those other critical partners in terms of scaling up finance, not just climate finance, but finance for poor people in the world. And the bank, I know, is working on its IDA replenishment, absolutely critical that it will be fully funded, because this is one of the major windows of development finance for the extreme poor. We have with us Jürgen Vögele, the Vice President for Planet, or as we always say, everything that's really important. It is climate, environment, agriculture, water, and forestry. And so, Jürgen, to you, how do you see climate action for children and young people playing a role in the World Bank's mission to create a sustainable world without poverty?
Well, thank you, Kitty, for having us here as one of the partners in this endeavor. Also, thank you, Catherine, for being excellent partners with that. I tell you, this is very personal for me. Just listening to these kids, I have 3 at home, raised them. Who would have thought just 10 years ago that our kids are worried, that they're scared of what's coming for the future? When I grew up, it was the opposite. We had everything in front of us, and these kids now are really worried. And I think it is up to us as institutions that work in development to make sure that what we do has a direct positive impact on the next generation. Thank you, Kitty, for making the pitch for the IDA replenishment. Pleasure, good to hear this, but the fact of the matter is the World Bank is the largest funder of climate change finance in developing countries today by far. And we're certainly by far the largest when it comes to adaptation, which is where we need to spend a lot more money going forward, because it's happening. Climate change is no longer what happens in the future, it's what's happened every day today to everybody around the planet. And so we need to step up. And within that part of adaptation finance, we need to shift it much more closely to the younger generation. And I can tell you we have a president with Ajay Banga who is 100% committed to this, because he understands that when you send children to school, your chance of a green transition multiplies. Every school year that a child spends more in school makes it 8% more likely that they understand what the problem is and that they will work towards a solution. So there were very clear indicators. Also, 400 million children lost school time because of direct climate change events. It's dramatic, it's drastic, and it cannot be replaced for those children very easily. So this is no longer one of many priorities. It's got to be a key priority going forward. So you have our commitment to continue to keep a focus on this. The World Bank, as a final point, maybe the World Bank has spent about $16 billion last year on the HD sector. You mentioned the various social protection, the broad range of education, health, etc., which is not a trivial amount, and 25% had direct climate co-benefits. 10 years ago is next to nothing. We didn't even think about the connection between the social sectors and climate change. Now this percentage goes up every year, and we will do everything we can to continue to move this up. Thank you, Kitty.
Thank you, Jürgen, and this is a really important point. We are moving up. We are changing the percentage of what used to be the stepchild of climate finance, which is adaptation finance. But I think what is needed as climate change is impacting more and more children. We need to accelerate, we need to amplify, and we need to increase that amount quite rapidly to keep all the children in the world safe. We have also with us the Minister for Environment and Climate Change in Somalia, Her Excellency Khadija Mohammed Al Makhzoumi. Having heard all this, Excellency, how are you preparing for the next NDC, and how will you make sure that this is a child-sensitive, child-responsive national climate plan? And what are your ideas of how to finance and fund your ambitions? Over to you.
Thank you so much. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I just want to say a few things and say a more in Somali Festival before I answer your question. Is me as a Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and at the same time that I am MB that representing and hearing more of people that are represented in the capital. Of course, that you could imagine that how many people could say the mothers talk about their children and how they suffer. You cannot imagine how they're suffering their children. And at the same time that I am a mother with the 5 children, and that everyone sitting here, most of you guys, parents that feels their children, that everyone wants for the children for the best. I just want to, previously I just want to give you feedback about in Somalia, our nation is struggling with the harsh and climate effects, places children and the youth and the center of our climate strategic. Somalia is the rank 4th on the Children Climate Risk Index, highlighting the risk our young ones face from droughts, floods, and disaster outbreaks, all of which threaten their health, education, and future opportunities. Given severe limitation in water, healthcare, and education access, Somali children remain extremely vulnerable. Shockingly, only 2.4% global climate finance targeting action focusing on children, a figure far too low to safeguard our future generation. Immediate implementations in health, nutrition, and water, sanitation, and hygiene infrastructure are vital to promote resilience among our children. In collaboration with the UNICEF and other global partners, Somalia is actively implementing child-centered initiatives such as the Joint Resilience Program, which delivered essential healthcare, nutrition, and education service. By promoting community-led solutions, we are encouraging a group of young climate advocates. Our national adaptation plan highlights the resilience of Somalia youth against the climate challenges through the key sector, such as education, health, and infrastructure. By improving knowledge, healthcare, and securing safe space, Somalia is committed to ensuring a promoting future for its youth. These efforts demonstrated our dedication and prioritization child-focusing climate adaptation within our national climate response strategic. So, as we say that GCF here today and the World Bank and everyone is here and UNICEF, we really need come up with the conclusion about our children. How can we save our children and to protect our children about the climate change? We need one umbrella to could able to have something together, and we're really looking forward UNICEF could able to implement something able. I know UNICEF is doing with the education, but we need more about the climate change and how can we protect our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And I just want to reiterate here one of the figures that Her Excellency pointed out, that currently of all global multilateral climate finance, just 2.4% is programmed in a child-responsive way. Now, we're all anxious to get more climate finance, especially as in this COP we'll talk about the new quantified climate finance goal. But it is also what we have needs to be programmed with a razor-sharp focus on those that are most vulnerable which is the children. So even if we keep the portfolio as it is, if we go from 2.4 to 20%, we're making real impact in children's lives. So let's keep that in mind while we move to Keo Young-chung, the Ambassador and Deputy Minister for Climate Change of Korea. Welcome, Excellency. A deep partnership with Korea, obviously the host of the Green Climate Fund, but also a deep partner of us at UNICEF. And if I may ask, Ambassador, what are the unique aspects and ambitions of Korea's climate partnership with organizations like UNICEF? If you could kindly elaborate. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ms. von der Heyden. I'm actually in the middle of climate negotiation, and
We can hear you.
there's a gentleman who's saying something else.
Saying a swap.
Swap the...
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you again. So I'm I just came out of in the middle of climate negotiation, and I think being present in this kind of gathering to talk about the group of the world who are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change kind of gives me a new sense of mission as I embark on the negotiation at hand. Korea is very uniquely positioned because we began as a recipient of international aid, one of which is UNICEF back in '49. But now we are in a position to also help the other vulnerable groups to actually deal with very many challenges that they face. And one of them is, of course, the adverse effect of climate change. And as Ms. Russell has rightly pointed out, children, even in these the countries which are faced with these challenges, and even in those countries, they are the most vulnerable. Korea is firmly committed to bridge the development gap between developing and developing world. We are uniquely positioned in the climate negotiation context. We are developed countries in all social and economic measures, but because of the historical the responsibilities, we are the developing country in this context. But still, we are contributing to the climate finance as I think one of maybe it differs from sectors to sectors, but we are probably at 9 or 10ths in contributing to the climate finance. And that's bigger than some of the bigger developed countries. And so in that sense, Korea is playing sort of a green ladder role for the developing world. And we, as you rightly said, have very special relations with UNICEF, GCF, and World Bank in addressing these challenges. And also we are partnering with our partners in the African continent. We recently held a Korea-Africa Summit, and during which we made a significant pledge to the recently launched Loss and Damage Fund. We will continue to do so with our multilateral organizations and also with partners bilaterally to continue on this path. And I also am a father of a young child, and this again gives me a renewed sense of mission as I embark on this negotiation. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, and I really hope that all the parties to the COP will be inspired by the example of Korea, not just as the green ladder, as you call it, from a recipient country to an important partner and provider of development aid, but with a razor-sharp focus on climate change and how that impacts the poor people around the world, because that is something we can actually do something about. And we need to do that particularly for the young people who have all of their life ahead of them, for the next generation, because I will soon be pushing up the daisies, as they say. But Farzana Farooq Jum, our youth advocate from Bangladesh, has all her life ahead of her. And so the important question here to Farzana is, what do you make of all of this? Over to you.
Thank you so much. As Kitty said, I am the youth advocate, which actually implies that I represent the young people in space like this. And 4 years before, when I walked first time into COP at Glasgow, I was one of 2 young people from Bangladesh, and this time we came with more than 20 people. So that's a positive note I want to start with. And I just want to show that we already championing the youth engagement. Now it's our time to make it meaningful, make it resourceful, and make it valuable. I came here with the story of a 17-year-old young girl who met me with a child of 3 years old. So a 17 years old having a 3 years old means a child is carrying a child. And when we are talking about children, when we are talking about young people, if we can't address that woman, that child, then we are not actually addressing the problem. Why I actually came up with this story is because when I met her, my first idea was, why are you married so early? And she replied, I live in salinity. My parents had to marry me off, and she was defending her parents, that my parents had to marry me off because at 35 I can't be a mother because of salinity. I'm losing my reproductive health system. And that's not something we talk about. We don't see how it's like climate change is not about sea level rise. Climate change is about health. Climate change is about the student not going to school. Climate change is about like many different things, and that's why the discussion is very important. So when I actually meet people like this, every other day, and also like when the ED was talking about 1 billion children, I was one of the people who wrote the word for that report. So before the world knew, I saw this report talking about 1 billion people, 1 billion children are being at risk. And I was 21 back then. And I was in depression for a couple of days that what are we even doing? And is there anything we can do? Like, is there any future for me? The right I have right now, I think water is a right for now. Is water a right for the children who will born in like 5 years, in 10 years? So if that's not a right, then we need to actually make sure that we work for them. We work for my future. We work for my children. And everyone is talking about being a parent. Maybe I also want to be proud parent and say that, okay, I made sure my children also have right. And that's why actually what I do. So I just want to finish with that note is when we all are talking about children, we need to make sure that we make this environment for them. I'm very overwhelmed every time I'm at COP, and I don't want that to actually happen to a 13-year-old because we couldn't give them rights and they had to come here in this overwhelming space to ask for their right. We need to make this space, children, accessible for them so they can put their voice in their way. We need to make it accessible for young people so who will inherit this earth can work the way we want. And finally, we need to make it resourceful for them so that we don't need to always fight on where is the money, do we even have money, because I see money going on here and there when we talk about, and all these like awesome people are talking about that. Yes, we are doing the support, and we are supporting there here and there. So I think there is money, and I am very hopeful that with all these people, we can actually envision a future which is for me, for my children, and for 7 generation coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want you to remember that statistic, right? They went from 2 youth representatives to 20. So we can do that with climate finance too, from 2.4 to 20. And maybe just to highlight, some of those issues that are always forgotten when we talk about climate change is rights violations. What Farzana mentioned around girl marriage, we have those statistics. The research is out there that when a heat wave in certain areas of Bangladesh lasts longer than 30 days, that girl marriage, age bracket 11 to 14 years old, goes up by 60%. Those are lives cut short because parents have no other option as a negative coping mechanisms to sell off their girls because it's a mouth less to feed. That's what's happening to people real time right here, right now. In the Amazon right now, 420,000 children that are suffering because the rivers are dry. They don't get food, water, medicine, but they can also not go to school in the far out regions in the Amazon. That's how they transport to school. Children are missing school because of this. We saw what happened last week in Valencia. We know what's happening in the small island states with the hurricanes. But who thinks about what heat waves does to children? Heat waves are impacting pregnant women. Heat waves lead to preterm labor and low birth weight, lead to changes in breast milk, but also lead to cognitive decline in children. You are impacted and impaired for life. How are we going to make sure that we address those needs from preconception right up to adolescence? That is what we are talking about. So I would like to go back, if I may, to Kathy Russell and ask, as we see the many impacts of climate change in all its dimensions on the lives of children, how will UNICEF deal with that as you develop the new strategic plan going forward? Will that become a bigger priority?
Thanks, Kitty. Well, actually, as we're developing our strategic plan, we are really focusing on a couple of priorities, and climate is one of them. And we've done a lot of work over the last 2 years. George is here. George has led that work, really looking at, does it make sense for UNICEF to be in this space or not? And we really looked at that rigorously to make sure that this was some place that we needed to be. And at the end of the day, it was clear to us, because of the impacts that climate change is having on children, and because UNICEF is uniquely placed, because we work with governments all around the world and we can help them do their NDCs and their NAPs, but also we're in the communities with the public, with the people, with the children, and we can see how we can help them become more resilient to climate change, adapt to climate change, and we've done a tremendous amount of work in that space. And I think it's not like UNICEF has a lot of work to do in all sorts of issues, all sorts of areas, but it became very clear to us that this was a critical challenge for children all around the world, and UNICEF needed to play a really important role. Of course, our role is a piece of a much bigger effort here, a much bigger puzzle, and the challenge and the important work here is to find the right partners, to do this in conjunction with others, and importantly from our perspective, to make sure that people understand why this is a particular challenge for children and how the needs of children need to be addressed specifically. And so that's the role we're playing, but we're playing it with many, many other important players, many of whom are here on this panel, and I think working together we can have a real impact in this space.
Thank you, Kathy. And for those that know UNICEF, if there's something in the DNA of UNICEF, it's not just children, but it is also partnership. It is really about how do we get to scale. And we cannot do that without big friends with deep pockets, such as the Green Climate Funds. Again, Henry, super appreciative of the support of the Green Climate Funds to the cause and the rights of children. Let's not forget that the Convention on the Rights of the Child is the most ratified human rights convention in the world. It is something that almost every country signed up to, and we just have to deliver it. So your contribution, Henri, through the Green Climate Fund will be critical. Can you tell me just one more time, how do you think the Green Climate Fund will target children in your investment portfolio? Are they an investable proposition for a bank?
Thank you, Kitty. Great question. Our executive director, Mafalda Duarte, launched last year at the United Nations General Assembly a vision that we would become a 50 billion fund by 2030. That is the famous 50 by 30 vision. And this is our capital to be catalytic to crowd in more public and private capital. I believe what we've lacked is more intentionality in having youth and children at the core, and also being more fit for purpose. The way we work with entities that are serving children is already being said that the majority goes through governments or it could go through NGOs. And we had Farzana providing extremely important sort of experiences and stories that really tell us we cannot do this in a one-size-fits-all. So I would believe and I hope that the private sector will take this into account. We have programmed about 36% of our capital through private sector partners. We are working with another partner, and they are creating youth incubators for climate solutions with a focus in locally led adaptation. This is an area that when we work with technology incubators and accelerators, we can certainly work with the private sector. And we can also mobilize or support mobilizing the local private sector. Another important window where GCF could be also a good partner to UNICEF and all our colleagues here representing different entities is we have a window that is readiness. The readiness window is a window that supports the enabling environment. It's a window that supports the NDCs, the NAPs. So we could also really try to push them to have that youth-centric and child-centric approach in those institutional and important policy pieces that are going to enhance the enabling environment. It is all a matter of finding the right way for us to serve those that are as vulnerable as children and youth are. So I'm very hopeful and very optimistic, and I'm also very grateful. GCF went through a replenishment last year. Our replenishment is almost around 13 billion. We're hoping to have one more contributor come through, hopefully at COP, so we might be able to have a higher number. But this is not enough. We really need to come all together and also be able to complement and have more coherence on how we collaborate. We do have a very fragmented climate finance space. There are more than 80 vertical climate funds. We've got all the MDBs working in a climate focus. So I believe there is an important work that we also work through our own bureaucracies to make sure that we collaborate, that we partner, and that we each bring the best we can. GCF has a very high risk appetite. We just actually reaffirmed that in our board meeting. We don't have a rating agency, so we're able to take risks that other partners are not able to take. So we're hoping to come in that space to be able to bring others. But we really need to sometimes enhance our partnership and have more intentionality in serving youth and children. Thank you.
Thank you, Henri. I think we will offer you a job at UNICEF. Just kidding. But very important, really, to bring in youth right from the get-go. And perhaps, Jürgen, if I may turn to you, I think we've spent quite a lot of time talking about the unique vulnerabilities, right? Particularly of the under 5 years. I know this is an old statistics, but WHO once clarified that of the global health burden associated with climate change, the majority, around 80%, falls on the shoulders of the under 5. But there's also another side to young people and climate change, that they want to be part of the solution pathways, that they want to be equipped to go green, that they want to be skilled for a future that looks very different than when I left high school. It's a green and digital future. And how is the World Bank also investing in young people so that they can actually be part of the accelerator of the green transition we need to see in water, in green energy, in agriculture? Over to you.
Thank you, Kitty. That's the vision, and that's what we're aiming for. We got to include young people right from the beginning in the design of what we do. So this is where this is all starting. Like you say, when you hover at the national level, you don't see what happens on the ground every day and how it impacts the children and how it impacts their development. So we got to get a much stronger, approach and partnership. Henry, you pointed it out, and others. We need to do this together. This is not one piece, and we need to leverage the scarce resources that we have in a way that we're not doing yet. There is a lot more to be done. I want to give a personal shout out to South Korea's leadership and support during the COP. We've been working together for many years now, and Korea is more engaged, more generous, more focused on climate and food security and a number of other areas than just about anyone else. I just want to make that personal remark here because I've seen it with my own eyes. Maybe because your development trajectory was so fast that many still remember what it was like not so long ago. And you also have this incredible vision and reality to share that if you focus on family, on social development, on economic development, on technology, on climate, you can make a huge difference in a short period of time. So very inspirational there as well. So for us, it's very clear. This is the trajectory where we will go. But Kitty, if you allow me, there are two things, and you mentioned it in a way before. There is the money that's out there right now dedicated, including GCF and us and many others, to climate. We got to shift within that focus more to adaptation. We can't take our eyes off mitigation, of course not. But even a few years ago, there wasn't this urgency to deal with the situation on the ground that we have. We are doing this. We are committed to maintaining 50% of what we do in adaptation, even though the world altogether only does a fraction of that, of climate money. But then there is the bigger question. We need to grow the pie of climate finance, Kitty. And we've discussed this a lot. And in this venue and many other places, everybody's like, we got no money. We got no fiscal space. And I'm like, no, you do. There is money. There is a lot of money. And today, countries that say they have no money for climate change spend on average 10 times the amount of money that they spend on climate change to actually destroy the climate. And I tell you, with fossil fuel subsidies, agricultural subsidies, fisheries subsidies, it's about $1.2 trillion per year. Not billion, $1.2 trillion per year. So basically, countries are spending 10 times the money to destroy the climate and then $1 billion to try to fix it. And I think this is a taboo. It's a political economy reality, but it needs to be put on the table in this event as well to have a conversation, to repurpose those subsidies and turn them into climate money. And a significant fraction of that money needs to go into the space that we're discussing here in this panel. I know this is uncomfortable discussion, but we can no longer afford globally to ignore that huge pot of money because it's there. And there will be many events actually during the course of the next 2 weeks where we will go country by country a little bit deeper into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen, and thank you for pointing out the inconvenient truth that we sometimes have to face and how we use our money either for the global common good or for the not so good. That's a choice that each and every one of us make, also at the individual level, at the community level, and at the country level. I would like to now turn to the Minister of Somalia and really also ask her, as you develop the next NDC, which needs to be submitted by all countries by March 2025, how do you envisage that young people in Somalia can participate in what you prioritize in your next climate plan? Do you have plans to engage with them and to ensure that their priorities are reflected in the NDC? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our NDC, we're supposed to have submitted our NDC 2 this year, but in Bonn we just came up and say we need to have the NDC 3. NDC 3 to able to we're working on it. You have to submit it on the NDC 3 by February. We were just asking ourselves how, because Somalia, we don't have gas emission system that is still. And are we going to submit without gas emission that we don't have our system on there? And how can we make it by February? And if we don't do it by February, what will happen? Especially country in Africa, Somalia, going through vulnerable country. And because end of the day, that if we don't have the right data we think like it's not the right thing that we need to implement those documents. So this is the what UNFCCC that we have been discussing about that, and how can we able to move? Can we extend? Because when you're talking about that, we are on November, December holiday until January, February. You need to submit, so it's impossible for us in Somalia to be able just complete any document. We want the right document to implement and to do it when we have our data right way. So I think we will able to prepare ourselves by extending that one up to the June. This is how we are preparing at the moment, and this is what we're working on it to have the right data. And I just, if you don't mind, allow me what our colleagues that were just talking about now about the finance. This is my first time discussing. This is my third time in COP, and this is my first time in panel discussion about children. Our children and discussion about the children is very important. And our colleagues now in panel says that there is a fund. And there is a fund, truly, and the young lady already said there's fun. So when she's a young and she's not politic and she's not in that position, she knows already. And I believe everyone knows that there is a fund up there, but there is not the right partners that discuss about our children. The children is very important. We need to focus. And the COP29, we need to have a right decision about our children. We don't want to come back COP 2030 and discuss about the same thing. We need World Bank, GCF, they have funds, but they need to have the right partners. And especially when I come to my country, I don't see, I'm the focal point of the NDA, and GCF, Jeff, I don't see anyone talking about children proposal. And this is what we need, saying we need the right partner and come out and say, because I know GCF, if we have the proposal talking about the children, Mafalda, she will never hesitate. So I think the World Bank, same thing, any our fund. But we need the right document, we need the right partner to come up and put it on the table and discuss it. And I believe in COP29 we need to have decision, and this is the reason we're here today and discussion. And we need to follow and fight back regarding about the children. And this is the most important thing for our life, our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And just to reiterate how important it is what the Minister just said, how many discussions have you had about half of the extreme poor of the world, which is children? And do people know that COP28 was the first ever discussion and decision in UNFCCC where children were referenced? We had much language around gender, which is incredibly important. We have language around indigenous peoples, which is incredibly important. But never before in the history of UNFCCC, until last year, did we have one decision related to the unique vulnerabilities of children. This has to change if the climate community is to be relevant for children of this world, for 1 billion children at extreme risk of climate change. It's critically important that COP29 takes those decisions. So I would like to turn to one of our climate partners, Korea, and ask, how would you support UNICEF's and basically this panel's focus on advocating for adaptation in the new climate plans of member states, particularly in regards to children during COP29?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, UNICEF is a key partner for us in engaging with children, but now there's a new context of having our cooperation to focus on the issues concerning climate and children. Just to take a few steps back, a few months ago, our Constitutional Court came out with a landmark decision in Korea that actually gave a standing to not an actual legal claimant, but a group of claimant as the next generation. And it found it unconstitutional for the government not to have a long-term plan from 2030 till 50. we have a law that obligates the government to reach net zero by 2050, and of course we are the party to the UNFCCC, so we are obligated to present our NDCs by then. But nationally, we didn't have a long-term plan. In my view, I'm a lawyer too. They overstretched the law a little, but it gave out a political message to give voice to the next generation and to children. So in that sense, it gives the government a new sense of mission in incorporating the needs of children to tackle the climate challenges. With UNICEF, I am aware that we have been in consultation with UNICEF for various children-related issues since 2004. And I think the policy consultation should include children who are also victimized by the climate change challenges. And recently, our aid organization, KOICA, Korea International Cooperation Agency, signed an agreement with UNICEF called the Climate Action for the Last Mile, Reaching the Most Vulnerable Children, and it was launched this May. And Korea will grant 3-year, $39 million US dollars worth of support for climate-smart, gender-responsive social services in education, health, nutrition, and more for children in Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, Comoros, and Zimbabwe. So, well, thank you very much, Jürgen, for mentioning that we are doing what we can. But in my view, we need to do more. And I think, such a program with UNICEF, I hope it will increase in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. It's a pleasure to hear that we all need to grow our impact for children. And as the last, but certainly not the least, I always give the floor last to those that matter most, which are the young people, which is our future. Farzana, if you had an ask to this panel, to this audience, and to all the parties to the COP, what would your ask be, having heard all this?
Thank you so much. I just want to start from where you end about we have money, and when I hear about a lot of talk going around in this space, talking about money, talking about just finance, talking about transition, I want to first start to ask everyone that let's make sure we don't have to have another conference around renewable energy and the minerals, where actually the children have to bring those minerals for the renewable energy. So when we talk about switching, or when we talk about transition, it need to be just for the children and for the people. And the next is when we are talking about finance, especially with all the awesome people in this panel, we need to make sure that it's for the children and young people, and we engage them in this process to design and to implement, because we have more energy to actually implement the work we are talking about. And lastly, when we talk about implementing with young people, we need to review all our heavy document, which a lot of time I need to Google every other word. So if when we actually working with World Bank, with GCF, how do we make sure that the people we want to work to innovate also understand what that means, what that exact one word actually change the whole narrative? So that's very important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Farzana. I think you've brilliantly summed it up. It is 10 a.m. I want to thank the audience online that have followed our event. I want to thank you all here as the audience. Special thanks to the Green Climate Fund for accrediting UNICEF as a partner to the Green Climate Fund, to the World Bank for your partnership, the support from Korea, the voices from Africa and from young people, all those we aim to serve as UNICEF and as partners. And let's be very clear that as UNFCCC, as all of us here, we started very late integrating children and their rights and their voices and our need to be responsive to their needs. We started very late. But if there's one thing that's very clear, is that we cannot finish late. So we better get out of here and get it done. Thank you so much. Have a great day.